Yep. So while we're waiting, just to see who else jumps in here. Anybody got anything from last week? Questions that you guys figured out or concerns? Anything at all? Renee's eating. It's all right though. It's fair. Nothing? All right. Right on. Well, we'll start with 19. We'll see how it goes.
So do you feel any better since this weekend?
No, I feel worse. I feel worse. I think we're, I mean, I don't want to get into politics here on this thing, but yeah, I'm like, there's constitutional issues that have to be addressed, but I just don't see it happening.
Well, I think right now we're at the state constitution stage.
I didn't even move it.
Oh, for sure.
Because they're looking at the state rights right
I mean,
now.
they're obviously they're not, their game plan is federal, is the Supreme Court. So they've got to lose all these lower cases before they can get to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And honestly, I mean, I guess it's constitution related. You want to talk about what part of their game plan may be. Obviously, if they don't get those electors set by the 14th, it goes to the House. And I think these courts are realizing that. If you see how fast these court rulings are coming out, I think these courts are doing the best they can to make sure this thing is done by the 14th. You know, the last thing they want is this stuff hanging over their head, and then they got to send it to the House. And really, I know constitutionally that's how it's supposed to work, but buddy, if it goes to the House and the votes don't count, it's going to be big problems in this country, man.
Yeah.
It is.
There's gonna be a lot of disgruntled people. Either way, there's going to be a lot of disgruntled people.
Half the country is going to be pissed off no matter what happens with this.
Yeah, my theory is if it ever got to that point that there'd be some squishy Republicans that vote for Biden anyway. And to be honest, I'd be fine with that if that's a that forces a constitutional remedy to a lot of these.
Are you talking about if it gets to the House?
Yeah.
I think, and don't ask me where I got this from, but I'm under the impression that they are required to go by party lines once it gets to the House. And
I haven't heard that, but that's interesting.
That's the whole thing, is that the House obviously is controlled by more Republican legislatures than it is Democratic. So
yeah, my understanding was that each state got one vote.
Mm-hmm.
So the delegation comes together. So my thought process with that would be that if there's 8 conservatives and 7 Democrats, that they get to come together and they individually cast 15 votes, and whoever wins gets the state delegation. But I haven't got a for sure answer on that. So that's interesting.
You know, and one of the things too, I mean, that you got to worry about is a lot of these, can you imagine the pressure? You know, you're going to be responsible for burning this country down. I mean, just the pressure, just to be able, just to say, look, it's not worth it to me. I'm voting Biden, you know, what's right or wrong. I'm not saying either way is right now. I don't know who's right, but
yeah, you're hitching the your trailer to that truck, and you're sticking with it for life, because it's
every city that burns down, you're going to feel like, man, I had a part in this, you know. I don't know. I'm glad it's not me, nor will it be. Renee.
Yes, it will.
Oh Jesus! Now the second half's here. Now I'm going to get tag teamed. I thought I was getting away.
Larkin 2024. That's what I heard.
What's that?
Larkin 2024 is what I heard.
I'm going to try for the Supreme Court. Is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the first Supreme Court justice with a high school education. So let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into it here. We're at 21, so we'll get into section 5. If nobody has questions for Article 1, section 1 through 4, then we'll move on. All right. What's going on over there, Renee? You all right?
Yeah, it's your destiny, as Davis is.
Oh, whatever. I don't want to hear the chat. Quiet from the gallery.
Back on track. Focus.
Yeah. All right, so we'll jump right into Article 1, Section 5. Now, I don't know how far we're going to get. My guess is we're probably going to end somewhere. We're definitely not going to get through Article 1, Section 7, because there are, what do we got? clause 2 has like, I don't even know how many sections. So that's my guess, is we'll get through 5, 6, maybe into 7 tonight. What time is it? No, 8:07. We might not. We might only get through 5 and 6. So anyway, Article 1, Section 5, Clause 1, if you guys are ready, is each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. But a smaller number may adjourn for the day today, and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. Oh, boom. A little bit of bourbon going on there. Who is that? Who's trying to seduce me here? So that is clause 1. Article 5, I'm sorry, Article 1, Section 5, Clause 1. What do you guys think? Oh, geez, you did that on purpose. You left here so I would look at the liquor collection. Squirrel. So what do you guys think? So basically what we're saying here is that each house can vote newly elected members. Oh, we're not to that part yet, Section 5. Nope, that is the next clause. So what do we think? Where's David Davis? I know he has something to say.
Yeah, just a definition here for quorum, because that's an interesting word. The 1755 definition of quorum is a bench of justices or such a number of any officers as is sufficient to do business. So there's quorum.
Right on. I was right. So what I was going to say was that each house can basically vote newly elected members out if they were elected either dishonestly or for not meeting constitutional requirements. The houses have, they're the sole judge of the elections for their own houses on the returns and qualifications of its own members. Now, we'll get into clause 2 there in a minute. Yeah, so that's basically what Article 1 is. Or Section 5, Clause 1. Anybody, anything on that? Does everybody understand that? Everybody know what a quorum is?
So this has nothing to do with presidential election, right?
No, we're still, Article 1 is still legislative. So everything we talk about here is legislative.
Are we in Section 5?
Article 2
Clause-
gets into executive.
Are we in Section 5, Clause 1?
We are in Section 5, Article 1, Section 5, Clause 1. About to move on to,
Okay, we're good. Sorry.
no worries. All right, so we'll move on to Clause 2, which is each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior. Yeah. And with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. All right. So again, not even newly elected, each house, if they feel that their members are disorderly enough, doing the wrong things, going against the Constitution, whatever they feel, if they decide with 2/3, concurrence of 2/3, they can expel that member from Congress. Now, we laugh, although it is funny because we have not done it recently. Since 1789, there have actually been 9 expulsion proceedings with 15 senators expelled. Most are leading up to the Civil War, though. So after the Civil War, and that was because they thought that these people were going against the Union, right? They thought they were seditious, and that is why they were expelled. After the Civil War, not so many. But apparently leading up to the Civil War, if they thought you were supporting the rebellion, out. The House has had 29 proceedings with 5 expelled. So they've had a lot more proceedings, but they've only expelled 5, 3 for corruption, 2 for supporting the rebellion. So while it does not happen much, it has happened a lot in the past where they've expelled members, but apparently now it's just okay. You can do whatever you want. You take lobbyist money, you can go against the Constitution. So, yeah. But it's there. If somebody ever gets the cojones and they can talk 2/3 of each house into it, they can get rid of the bad apples. But again, right now, is Congress ever going to limit themselves? Right? Never going to be term limits. They're not going to throw the swamp out. They're trying to refill it right now. They're trying to appoint, career politicians. I don't care what side you're on. Career politicians that haven't done anything don't deserve a place in government. We need those guys back that were kicking people out left and right before the Civil War. That's who we need back. We need to find their ancestors. That's who you get running, Renee. All right, so clause 3, questions or discussion on that, on 2? Anybody got anything? My historian, David Davis, you got anything?
I just think it's another interesting
Boom.
example
I knew
of
it.
the balance of power, where you have, again, we have that national supremacy idea where we have a body able to police itself, expected to police itself. The writing of that makes it sound as though it is an expectation of this body that it will self-police. And that's interesting. Wasn't it Jefferson that said, if men were angels, we would need no government?
Correct.
So, you know, it's interesting there that we send people to govern and to represent us, but then they have the power to police their own.
Well,
They're like the mouse watching the cheese,
It is now.
yeah.
I
right?
don't think it used to be.
Right? It potentially could be, but it's just interesting that they're given that power to self-police. I think that's noteworthy to illustrate there that when they designed this whole thing, they intended that to be a thing.
As we go through these things and you read some of these clauses, just the pure genius of them looking ahead and seeing what could happen, or basing it off what has happened, right, back in Great Britain, but seeing what could happen with this new government and putting safeguards in place to stop that, whether we disregard those safeguards now or not, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. I mean,
They were expecting honorable men to run for,
There's a word that's lost its meaning right there.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's
Let's
it.
look up honorable from the 2020 dictionary and see what that means.
Yeah.
I have a question. What would it take for citizens to actually bring something like this up to our legislative branch? Like, say, I don't like Pelosi, and I want to bring her up on something like this.
I don't think we
What would
can.
it
I mean,
take for citizens? I mean, because they're our elected representatives. So what would it take to get them to
Well,
listen?
If I could make I don't know if we have any lawyers here with us tonight or anybody who's better at legal language than I am, but I note that it says each house may determine the rules, punish members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3 expel a member. So I think that kind of paints you into a corner where it must be for violating the rules of the proceedings with disorderly behavior and with the concurrence of 2/3 expel a member. So it kind of.
though, I think, I mean, if you look at, listen, I think disorderly behavior, I mean, now I'm basing this on what we do today, right? Disorderly conduct, anybody who's ever drank in a bar, you understand what the law of disorderly conduct's for, right? Total horseshit. It is absolute horseshit, and we can make anything disorderly conduct, anything. So if you're acting like an asshole, oops, sorry, God, Steve, sorry.
Dump
If
button.
you're acting like Holly, I knew I saw it fit somewhere. So if you're acting like a jerk in the parking lot of a bar, right? Whether you're fighting, whether you're not fighting, you're just being loud, you're getting whatever, disorderly conduct. That's how we maintain order when those things are happening. Catch-all charge, is it bull crap? Sure it is, but it keeps the order. So I wonder if they're right, putting that in here as disorderly behavior is the catch-all, right? If 2/3 of the members decide what you're doing is disorderly, then they can expel you.
Well, and here's a question. Is this disorderly just while in session? Like during the proceedings?
Well, we're
not follow-
gonna get into
procedural.
that. We're gonna get into that. There's another clause that we're gonna deal with that does only require you to be in session. Because if you're not in session, I mean, you can be arrested for what you
Right, I
said.
think it says
So-
on the way to or from session, that clause you're talking about,
Right.
Jim. Yeah.
Yep, and we're gonna get to that.
But as
We're
far
gonna
as
get,
this one goes, does this mean you can be at a bar
I don't know.
and your conduct is?
I mean, if you're gonna take it at face value, I don't think it does, right? Because it doesn't say it. I think you take it at face value, and then that's where obviously the courts get involved and they decide.
Right.
And I could go through here. I mean,
Yeah. I think if you disconnect rules of proceedings from disorderly behavior, then I think it would have a broad scope. I think if you believe that disorderly behavior is referring back to rules of the proceedings, then I think it has a narrower scope. I think so. That's one of those interpretational things. The way it's written, to me, it feels like they're talking about the rules of their own proceedings
Yeah.
and policing their own there. But that's my interpretation.
Well, that's how I would take it as well, just because the next clause is still dealing with journal of proceedings. It seems like this is all talking about the procedure and, that needs to be followed by the House and the conduct within your office there.
You know what, I guess I might have misunderstood Jeff's question. I took it to mean like, so if they violate whatever's happening during the proceedings, they're going to be disorderly, right? By the rules. I mean, the rules are there, you're violating the rules. But things like when they're out stumping, right? They're giving speeches in their cities, things like that.
As a House representative, not.
Correct. And what I was talking about, where we're going to get into it, that speech, while they are out there in their communities giving those speeches, they are not immune from liability at that point. They're only immune from arrest and liability while they're on the floor of their houses, going from, they can't be arrested, right? Because that's what the king used to do. He would just arrest those he didn't want to hear from. They would be locked up. The proceedings would go on, and then nobody would ever hear from the guy, and then he gets out. So that's what that was for. But yeah, this probably just deals with following the rules, right? Because once they're out, those those rules for those proceedings don't apply. I mean, they can do whatever they want when they're out there talking.
I can't
That would
remember.
be my interpretation, yeah.
I can't remember what happened to Anthony Weiner, right? But didn't he end up getting censured and then brought up on like domestic charges or law enforcement charges? But didn't they get him while in session for his?
I don't remember that.
I
To be honest, I don't know enough about it. I mean, I know that I know he got, were there actual charges brought up on him though, or was there just an investigation from law enforcement?
I honestly can't remember. I know that he basically was never heard from again.
Because he would not have been immune from anything with that scandal.
He pled guilty to some sexting charges.
Okay, well then I think that can all be used against him. I mean, I think that's different probably because now he's got criminal charges against him. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the other question I have is each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, comma, punish its members for disorderly behavior, comma. So are these two different things? Can you,
Those are two different things, right? Because
right, they can establish what the rules for the proceedings are, but then it just does punish its members for disorderly behavior.
I
Doesn't really
think
say.
grammatically speaking, if those were separated by, would it be a semicolon? I
Yeah.
think those would be separate items in a list. But
Okay.
to me, it feels like they're linked, like it's a succession.
Okay,
And legally, the language "and" implies a connection between those things.
well,
I'm going to side with
This-
David on this one.
if Miss Zaney was here right now, she would tell you that my understanding of the English language is very limited, my high school English teacher. So,
I
when this-
had her too.
I did. Too.
yeah,
so back to
I
when
actually
it was-
still hold a lot of animosity towards her, but we'll get into that later.
back to when it was written. When this was written, the rules of the English language, the American English language, were not even in place yet. I mean, that wasn't until Webster came up with the dictionary that they asked him to come up with, and the
No, we
spelling.
still had, yeah, well, the rules,
Yeah, so you'd have to
we're
look that.
still using true English.
Yeah, I'm sure they're using British English at this stage still.
So I'm going to say that's one that's up for interpretation and we can move on.
Yeah. we're good.
As a,
Do I have any tens here? How come the tens never come to the meetings? Where are my tens at? Where are my tens that understand every single case law? Why aren't you here? Can you please check in next week?
exactly. So why don't we research that
We're looking at the big book.
and see what people say about that and we can,
Well, and I've got, just on that little clause right there, I've got 4 pages in the Heritage Guide that I can go through and it's got case law listed. I can figure it out and we can get back to that next week.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if you remind me.
Yeah,
All right, let's move on. We'll go on to clause 3. Clause 3, each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings and from time to time publish the same, excepting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy. And the yeas and nays of the members of either house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered into the journal or be entered on the journal. So there's three, as far as I know, there's still three journals, right? There's a Senate journal, there's a House journal, there's a congressional record,
Yep.
all of which should have, should be kept with all of these, the votes.
Still available online now.
What's that?
Available online now.
Yeah, yeah. No, my worry obviously is the accepting such parts as may, in their judgment, require secrecy. Now, I'm not a big sunshine law guy. I mean, I believe there should be transparency, but in order for the government to work effectively, they need to keep stuff secret. I get that, right? I mean, they can't give us everything because they can't. But, and I, again, would probably have to go through the entire, I probably have to, how many pages do I have here? No, it's only a page and a half with case law, and I'm sure there's case law on it. Yeah, I mean, that always makes me nervous whenever I see that they get to decide what secrecy. I mean, I get it. Anything for national security, fine, right? We're talking about going to war, fine. We're talking about our enemies, fine. I don't need to know that. You don't need to know that. I mean, but when we're talking about things, when we're talking about bills, right, that are going to affect the American people, we're talking about tax issues. We're talking about, anything, Second Amendment issues, things like that. I mean, are they allowed to just determine that it requires secrecy because they're afraid of the backlash? I don't know the answer to that. And that makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
Can I step in?
Yeah, oh God, somebody mute her, please mute her.
So there's certain things in city government that we go into executive session over and we discuss, but it's not public knowledge. So that's like, when you see council
Like
going
what?
into executive, we can't talk about it outside of that.
So give me generalities on what would be so important that the public can't know what's going on in local government. Because clearly you're not putting a militia together, right? We're not talking about attacking North Olmsted. We're not talking about North Ridgeville's nuclear arsenal. We're not talking about, so what is so important for local government, just generalities, that you can't let the public know about it?
People's positions, pay, just decisions on,
It's all public
Contracts
record.
or something, or?
no, not
It's all
necessarily.
public
contract.
record. The Chronicle publishes my salary every year.
That is correct. Everything is public record.
Right,
Every-
but the
everything
discussion
that
of
we do-
it, is what separates it.
But I
Sure.
guess if you're discussing, and I don't want to get into, I mean, this whole local politics thing, I really don't, but I guess my thing is, if you're discussing how you're going to spend money on positions, on pay, that's my money. Why am I not privy to that conversation?
Well, I think that's the executive privilege principle that's put everywhere, right? So when these executives have conversations, not that they're enacting the policy, but when they're just having conversations to gather intel and communicate with one another and get, understanding of a position, they're protected in that regard, because having a conversation and asking questions, if it's record, it can be used against you in a lot of negative ways. So that makes sense when the discussion has had to be kept private.
Well-
But once you make a recommendation to the community to give a salary or put somebody in that position formally, then now it's all public record. That makes some sense to me.
I guess, but I mean, I guess I could see.
No action has been taken by the conversation. So
Okay, and then I don't have a problem with it, right? And I guess if
once
you're talking
action is
about,
Like,
taken,
quiet.
And we can't vote.
conversation,
We
If council's-
can't take a vote in the executive
Right.
session either.
and if council's going to get together and they're going to talk about, say, a new piece of equipment that law enforcement needs, right? Or they're talking about something we need for an investigation, or I get that, because that's a sensitive issue. But I guess, I don't know, it just always looks shady to me. And I know it's not, it just does, but then again, I don't trust the government, so. Not necessarily my local government, local government I trust, state, to a point. Federal, I don't trust at all. I don't. All right, moving on. Everybody got it? Holly, I want to see a copy of the journal of your proceedings.
Oh, hang on a second. We did get a
Clause,
post here.
you got what?
I can't even see it.
From Brooke here. Ohio Executive Session Rule. To consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual, unless the employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual requests a public hearing by division G1 of section 1, blah, blah, blah. To consider the purchase of property, or to consider the sale of property by competitive bid if disclosure of the information would give a competitive advantage to the side. That makes sense. Conferences with the public body's attorney concerning pending or imminent court action.
All right, so all of this I get, right? I get personnel issues. You do not want a investigation or information that might pertain to an investigation coming out public, because then if the guy's not charged, the guy's guilty, right?
Yeah.
The public all thinks he's guilty.
Your focus is way off, Jim. I don't know what happened when you got really close, or
You're blurry.
My camera,
very blurry. Yeah.
how am I looking? Better?
You look like I've been drinking.
Yeah, thank goodness. I thought I was gonna have to cut myself off.
Well, all right, I'll tell you what. I wonder what that's all about.
I don't know.
Did you scoot in really close when I was reading, or put your camera?
Did you touch the camera lens?
Nope.
Yeah, looking at these reasons to go in executive session, I think a lot of that makes sense. Unfortunately, though, I do see that a lot of times, I think the executive session is overused for certain things.
Well, and that's just it. And that is my worry when you talk about how in their, what are the words here? In their
Opinion, in there, yeah.
in their judgment. That's my worry with in their judgment.
Well, the good thing we have going for us, though, is that it's 1/5 of those present, which is a considerably smaller number than.
And it's not 1/5 of those. It's not 1/5 of the house.
Everybody, it's who's
Those
there.
present. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's only the yeas and nays to be
Right.
entered in the journal.
Yeah.
is the 1/5.
Well, right. But without those,
Yeah,
right, they don't have to, I mean, if you don't have 1/5, then we don't have it in the journal.
Well, this is one of the big concerns with the bureaucracy, the state of bureaucracy in the United States right now. The executive branch has way more power than intended initially. A lot of the stuff was supposed to be done with the legislator. So, right? So when you give all this power, all these bureaucracies, the executive controls all of that. So they get in these closed door sessions, have, these executive privileged conversations, and what they're really doing is making policy.
Right.
And they sign a memo, and now it's policy because they're.
Well, this administration took advantage of that quite a bit. Claimed executive privilege on a whole lot of things that they probably shouldn't have been claiming executive privilege on. Yeah, I mean, that's my problem, man. Back in the day, you probably had good dudes in there, right? You had people that cared about this country. These people had actually fought for this country. These people created this country. They picked up arms for this country. And now we have people that are just lifetime politicians. They're there for their own, to pad their own pockets.
had their pockets. I was going to say.
The lobbyists.
The
They don't
lobbyists
care.
are,
They don't care.
if you
And
follow,
they'll do what they got to do to protect themselves. And if that means claiming privilege or whatever, they'll do it. And I believe that. And I would love for the government, just like in 2021, to be like, look, floodgates are open, man. 100%. Here, we have cameras on all the time. You can come anytime and watch us. Every office. We'll see then. We'll see then how the government acts. Shady dealings going on.
They have to spend all that money.
When Renee gets her congressman in there, I'm sure they're going to do a very good job rooting this out.
They have to close down that secret bank account for paying off the interns.
Yeah, exactly. Stop it. We're not talking about,
we're talking about the Constitution.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah,
we're moving on.
guys.
We are moving on to clause 4, right? Yep. Clause 4, neither house during the session of Congress shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place than that in which the two houses shall be sitting. So clause 4. Basically, the Senate can't just decide to adjourn. The House can't just decide to adjourn. They both have to decide to adjourn. The only exception to that would be that if neither one decides to adjourn, but they need to adjourn, then the president can make that decision for them. But I don't know of any time that that's, I mean, I'm sure it has happened. I don't remember any time that that's happened. And clearly, I mean, you don't want the House who's trying to get a bill through or trying to talk about something, and the Senate says, you know what, we're out. So it's just more checks and balances. The Senate's not allowed to leave without the House's blessing. The House isn't allowed to leave without the Senate's blessing. Everybody's there to do work. Me. Dave, what do you got?
I laughed out loud when you said they're there to do work.
Dude, don't get me started. Come on, David Davis, where you at? David,
I just
I'm
think,
sorry, Dave.
again, they can get
there
arrested,
he
brought
is.
in. You know, you can arrest them and bring them into work if they don't want to come. And then once they show up, you got to be able to put their feet to the fire. So here's the rest of that. You can arrest them and bring them in. And now they can't adjourn without permission. You know, they must, the tricks of the king of adjourning court and not showing up for things can't be pulled with this government. And that's the idea. The people that go there will be made to work.
In a perfect world.
In theory, this is
In a
all
perfect world.
theoretical here.
It's a change in work ethic and honor from,
It is a change in work ethic, for sure. For sure. They are not here. You know what? Back in the day, though, man, you had farmers that would come out of their fields to handle the business of Congress. They would get there and they would handle that business and they would get done with that business and they'd go back home.
Yep.
There was none of this coming in and not getting anything done for an entire session, but still collecting $174,000 a year.
Nunez, he's a farmer.
What's that?
Nunez, he's a farmer. Devin Nunez.
Yeah. But I don't think he goes back. Does he go back to farm?
No, eventually.
Jim,
Well,
you said it
that-
earlier. You know,
Go ahead.
these guys fought for the country to build it. So yeah, they were going to show up and they were going to do work.
Right.
Now
And-
it's my cushy job and I'll do whatever to save my skin and keep getting paid.
Those guys had a vested interest in this country. They were
Right.
not going to let this country fail. These guys today, half of them, 3/4 of them probably, I'd probably even go more. Don't care. Now, some of them got in here with the best of intentions, right? They did. And they just got swallowed up by the machine, which
Sure.
again is term limits, right? Had we had term limits in place, now, not only do term limits limit the congressmen and what they're capable of doing or not doing, but it limits the lobbyists because the lobbyists know, look, I'm not going to have this guy here for 30 years. This guy's only here for 6 years. I mean, so how much money are they going to spend? How long is it going to take them to get this guy in their pocket, right?
Did the first
It's a whole lot easier. It's a whole lot easier when you come into this knowing, look, the most I can do is 6 years and I'm out. I don't have to kiss this guy's ass. I don't have to take his money and worry about where my next paycheck's coming because I know in 6 years, I got to go back and get a job.
Yep.
Was there at any point back then that there were term limits for senators and representatives? And if not, isn't that something that they could have possibly foretold as far as corruption? I mean, when you have people who are sitting there lifelong, I know they didn't intend for it to be a full-time job.
That's a good question, man. It really is. I mean, all the stuff that they saw coming down the pike, how did they not ever see somebody sitting in office for 50 years?
Yeah, and you got to remember George Washington, like he set a precedent. There wasn't anything constitutional when Washington left that it was a 2-term thing for presidency. That wasn't until after FDR came in and got elected 4 times that they made a constitutional amendment for that. So that's even within the last 100 years.
I think it's worth noting also that these original people had more skin in the game. They had to go back home and run their farm or operate their business. And
Right.
that was their livelihood, not
Well,
the
and you
government.
know what? And Dave, one of the things about they had more skin in the game, and I think maybe this is what you were alluding to. Maybe I cut you off. But not only, yeah, they did have more skin in the game because whatever laws they passed, because Congress was a part-time job, whatever
Right.
laws they passed, they had to go home and live under.
That's
right?
right.
So you
Absolutely.
weren't getting these guys that were making these laws that didn't apply to them like now. You weren't getting these guys that are passing, well, healthcare, which should never be there anyway, but passing things like healthcare when it doesn't apply to them.
Right. They had to live under the legislation they made.
Correct.
They
Correct.
could not, they were not exempt from it, and they could not exist in a world where they could live only as a representative or a senator. That
Correct.
didn't work. It just was not
Correct.
possible back then.
Yeah,
So
my guess is it probably makes you think about measure your words a little better when you are voting for things and when you're crafting laws, when those laws are directly going to apply to you, your family,
sure.
your ancestors.
for sure.
So 100%, man. I mean, I'm
Meanwhile,
telling
we're just kind of stuck with it though, because I mean, no
you, we are.
congressman in their own mind would move to put term limits. I know Ted Cruz has mentioned it a few times here and there, but no one in the right mind is going to
Listen, man,
pass that.
we're gonna get
We're
into
gonna
it.
get there.
We're gonna get into it, but do me a favor and go on, and all you guys, conventionofstates.com, and they will explain everything to you. And we are not as far away from a constitutional convention as you think we are.
Already signed up. Already
Yeah, buddy.
signed.
I'm telling you, we are not as far. And you need to start going to your Congress people or your state senators, your state reps, and let them know that you want this done. We are not that far, and it always comes up. The legislation always comes up in Ohio. We just
What's that
always
website again?
short of passing it.
What was that website again?
It is the conventionofstates.com. There's a couple different Article 5 groups, and the Convention of States by far is the best one. Some of these groups are too wide ranging, right? They're wanting to go in for these constitutional amendments, but there's just too much shit. They can't get all this stuff in there. Where the Constitution is, or I keep saying the Convention of States is laser focused right now on term limits. The biggest one is term limits. I mean, that's what they're after, right? So, and I think once you see that this works, we get the Convention of States, they craft the amendment, it gets passed by 37, 38 states, you know, we're ratified, boom, there's term limits. And once the people see that there is a true path to us taking back the government, that this works, I think you're going to see a whole lot more Article 5 conventions. When people are like, look, what's happening here is horseshit. Let's get another convention.
Yep.
So yeah, go on there. We're going to get to Article 5, man. That's going to be a long discussion. I'm excited about Article 5.
Yeah. 15 states have passed Convention of States applications since 2014.
What do we need? 33, I think.
Yeah, and then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 more that have active legislation started in 2019. And 8 more that have it passed in one house of their the appropriate body. So like there are
It's out there. The talk is out there, right? How many states? Yeah. Are you counting them all total?
I think there's only 11 states that have no action taken on Convention of States. So there's roughly 39 that are
Okay, that have taken no action. So we have enough right now. If all those states were to pass this, we have enough right now to call for a constitutional convention. So get on your reps, man.
So we have term limits in Ohio, but what ends up happening is these guys will just bounce from the Senate to the House.
Is that it? Or did you cut off? What happened there? You said, yeah, that they'll just bounce from the Senate to the House and back again. And because of the loophole, right? Because of the way it's written.
and that's in the state Senate, I believe, not
Yeah,
that's definitely
right.
not the federal level.
No, it's definitely not federal. Federal's, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, and you know what? We're going through the US Constitution right now, but it is important to also, and maybe it'd just be too hard because I got people here from all over the place. It'd be too hard to do all the individual states. And most of the state constitutions mimic the federal constitution, but there are some differences. It's important for you to also read your state constitutions because, like I said, the people are affected more at the local level than they are at the federal level by far. I mean, your day-to-day life is greatly affected by your states and your local governments. Whereas the federal government, it should not be. I mean, it has been lately, but it should not be that affected. All right, moving on then. Where were we? We just finished. So we're in section 6. Section 6, clause 1. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services. Sons of bitches. To be ascertained by law and paid out of the treasury of the United States. They shall in all cases, except treason, felony, and breach of peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses and in going to and returning from the same. And for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. So obviously, we got a couple things here, right? Obviously, the pay, as ascertained by law. Does anybody see a problem with this?
Who makes that law?
They make the law.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
I'm
You know,
surprised they make 174,000.
Hey, man, $1 million, right? We'll just print more money.
Right.
No problem. Yeah, as ascertained by law. So the actual Congress sets their pay and they get to pass the laws because they handle all the legislative action, setting their pay.
You know what? They do have to keep it low enough to make it worthwhile the lobbyists to bribe them.
Well, sure, that's true too. You don't want to get too high because then the lobbyists are going to run out of money. It's just a big mess. I mean, when you read stuff like this, it amazes me. It amazes me how many people we're just like, whatever. Okay. I mean, give me an amendment, man. Let's cap it at $80,000, right? That Congress, I guess the question is then, oh, well, you'd never get anybody to do it. Not for all the work they got to do. Well, but they don't have to do work. They're putting in a whole lot more work than they have to do. All these.
Things I'm curious about is how much, like their housing down in DC, is some of that kind of going with the cost of living in DC, and
I don't know. Why don't you ask AOC? Right? What did she ask for when she got elected? She said she couldn't afford an apartment down there before she got her first check and wanted, I think, an advance, or I don't remember exactly what I think it was an advance.
Yeah.
Right. I would hope it's not. You're getting paid $174,000 a year.
Yeah.
I mean,
They should get paid $52,000 a year, $1,000 a week. You can get a housing stipend, and travel is paid for only to and from your location in DC.
boom. I'm all right with that. I'm all right with that. Now, I guess the problem is, I mean, as far as an amendment would go, $52,000 a year kind of puts you at, I mean,
They owe us money.
you would, sure, without a doubt, but then you would be forced to get another job, really. I mean, you got kids, you know what I mean? I don't know if I want my congressman doing two jobs at once. Make it a part-time job. I don't give a shit I don't care about that.
They don't do shit anyway. It is a part-time job.
No, it's not.
They only make a full-time.
And it is an average of the last 3 years of their current employment.
Yeah.
You're a police officer, your average pay the last 3 years.
I dig it.
$88,000 a year. That's what I'm making.
Yeah.
With overtime.
So if
So
a
I-
doctor gets
So
elected.
there you
and
go.
makes-
So for the next
200
6 years,
grand a
they'll make
year.
the same plus cost of living.
You know what? I
increase.
don't have a problem with that. That's actually brilliant. That's brilliant because I'm living under what I got now, right? I'm just taking a
Yeah.
new job, that means more. I'm all right with that.
And then you're allowed leave from your current position, just like what is it when you leave your job at the FMLA, you leave
Yeah.
your job, and your job has to be available to you when you come back.
Just like
So
military,
you-
right? If you
yeah.
get deployed, keep your job. They don't have to pay you, but you keep your job.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I don't need to get paid while I'm getting paid. Right? Not me. I mean, whoever Renee talks into doing this craziness. But yeah, no, I'm all for that. All right, moving on. They shall in all cases, except treason, felony, and breach of peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses and in going or returning from the same. Again, you look back on Great Britain and their legislators, depending on what they were going to talk about that day or what kind of trouble they were making, could be arrested on their way to a session and be put in jail and never had their voice heard. Right. And so that's one of the things they were trying to get away from. They did not want our Congress people to worry about what they were saying on the floor, to worry that they were going to be arrested for what they were saying, because let's face it, I mean, some of these things fly right in the face of what government wants, or, you know, think about some of the conservative views right now. If they could be arrested for some of this stuff, I mean, they might be a little nervous doing their jobs. Now, what it does not cover, and there's quite a bit of case law, I'll try not to read it all. What it does not cover is anything that is outside of what they need to do at their respective houses, right? So when they are in, you know, if Jim Jordan comes back here and is at a meeting and he's given some kind of passionate, crazy ass, hate-filled speech, then he is subject for whatever laws he may be breaking, right? If he is trying to talk to people about how maybe it's time to rise up and water that tree of liberty, then he is subject for whatever laws he may be breaking at that point. There are a couple case laws. Man, it's a long one. And I hate to read when we're doing this. Just hear me out here. An integral part, this is under United States versus Brewster, 1972. An integral part of the deliberative and communicative process by which members participate in committee and House proceedings with respect to the consideration and passage or rejection of proposed legislation, or with respect to other matters which the Constitution places within the jurisdiction of either house, are protected. I'm sorry, that was Gravel versus United States. Thus, the court has held that the clause protects such acts as voting, the conduct of committee hearings, the issuance and distribution of committee reports, the subpoenaing of information required in the course of congressional investigations, and even the reading of stolen classified materials into subcommittees' public record. We've already had that, right? We get a lot of stolen stuff that seems to pop up in the Congress that gets leaked, whatever. Now, if it's stolen and now they take this material and they read it, Jim Jordan comes out here, he reads it at the Elyria Moose Lodge. Now he can be found, he can be charged. He can be charged with receiving stolen property. He can be charged with a number of things. But if he is in receipt of stolen materials and he is on the floor of the Senate, or the House, whoever may, I can't remember who came, it doesn't matter. Whoever got the last one, Trump's tax returns and all that. But those people are protected, right? We know it's stolen. It was leaked. They don't have a right to have it. But if they're on the House floor, they can have it with impunity. That is Doe versus McMillan, 1973. Conversely, speech and debate immunity will not protect members engaged, even in their official capacities, in such non-legislative activities as negotiations with federal agencies, the issuance of press releases and newsletters, and the delivery of speeches in their home district. Gavel versus United States, Hutchinson versus Proxmire, 1979. Now, one thing though, and this is kind of big because you get these 19-year-old aides in college that are coming to help these congressmen out. Although the speech and debate clause speaks only of senators or representatives in order to effect its purpose, the court in Gravel declared that it applies not only to a member, but also to his aides, insofar as the conduct of the latter would be protected legislative act if performed by the member himself. So an aide who has access to stolen material gives it to the congressman. Congressman goes on the floor and reads it. Everybody's immune. That aide takes it, brings it back, says, you know what? I'm big shit now. I'm going to read this thing. I'm going to go to Bullfrogs in North Ridgeville, and I'm going to tell everybody about this. Receiving stolen property. Questions?
Now, is that just for the aide,
Or
or is the congressman or the congressman
no,
of the aide,
well,
are they held liable at all for their aide reading stolen property?
well, let me go on real quick because there's one more sentence. An aide who carries out congressional instructions that are found to be unlawful, however, is responsible for his acts, even though the legislators who issued the instructions continue to be protected. So even though a congressman tells this aide to do this, that aide goes out, goes to Bullfrogs, reads a bunch of stolen shit. Aide's going to jail. Congressman,
What do we call that? Thrown under the bus?
getting another aide.
Dispensable.
So here's the question on that then. If they're safe from showing stolen property, for example? What if it's damaging property? So that person, they're safe from that, but if it's damaging enough to where it becomes criminal activity, can that still be used as evidence?
Damaging enough that it can be,
Where it could like, maybe, what's what I'm looking for? Like show someone that somebody's, committing a criminal activity. So, they have evidence and they brought it to the floor. And, like Senator Joe Smith, whatever, is doing this. So does it still become evidence, even though that person is, has received
Sure.
stolen property? So
doesn't-
they're
it doesn't
exempt, but
protect-
the evidence is not?
it doesn't protect Joe Smith. It protects whoever's bringing it, right?
Okay,
So if that guy's under, he's got, again, let's just say leaked documents, stolen documents, whatever, steal something from Joe Smith's file. Somebody steals it from Joe Smith's computer, gives it to Congressman Jones. Congressman Jones is going to be immune from whatever he says on the floor. Joe Smith, not so much, right? Because whatever he's doing is probably outside the scope of what his legislative duties are.
that makes sense. I just
So-
wanted to get that clarified that, that it's stolen property, that person is exempt from it, but it can still be used to
You know
damage
what?
somebody.
You know what? Don't be shady.
Right.
Well, I guess my question here is about look at Trump's tax returns, for example, right? So I know if a senator used their position, took the tax returns, took it to North Ridgeville, and said all this stuff at the bar, now they're in trouble, right? But if they leaked it to the press and the press put it in the newspaper and now it's public record, and the senator takes that newspaper to that same bar, now it's a public record, and the leaking may have been illegal. We don't know that. That's kind of what I see with all this weird leaking stuff going on in DC. It's kind of way to circumvent
It's
all
like
that.
information laundering as opposed to money laundering.
I
Yeah.
guess. I mean, that would be a thing. I guess they would have to get to court, but yeah, right? I mean,
Once it's in the public record, New York Times says this. You're holding a newspaper article. You're not holding the evidence of tax returns.
yeah,
You're
I mean, I
saying-
guess that's right, right? I mean, say a councilman in North Ridgeville gives me some kind of information that's not supposed to go out. I go out and I give all that information out. So then the mayor comes to me and is like, hey, holy shit, you're not supposed to know this. Well, who told you this? If I hold up a copy of the Chronicle and the story's in there, I guess I'm absolved, right? Yeah, I guess it is. It's information laundering, I would think. All right. I didn't even think about it like that, but yeah, that's probably why it gets leaked to the papers. Protects them from anything they're about to say or do. But I guess so what happens then though? I mean, even if the paper leaks it, you show up with Donald Trump's tax returns, I would think nobody's that stupid. You show up with those tax returns in North Ridgeville, now we got problems.
Yeah.
Well, the tax returns themselves, but if you give it to the press and the press publishes them under the protection of
Right.
free speech.
you could hold up the news article that shows the or the tax return.
Right, and the press normally isn't expected to reveal their sources.
No, they don't have to at all.
Whoever said information laundering, that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it was. That's exactly what it is information laundering.
Didn't Pelosi call that a wrap-up smear?
Yeah, she did actually. What were they talking about with that one? Hillary, I think it was Hillary, right? But what was it, Hillary? What was she talking about with that smear? She did.
I
you're right.
can't, I don't remember. I don't
She was
remember.
like, yeah,
Wrap-up
here,
smear, you take it, you link it to the press, they print it, and then you
that's
can
what we
use
call
the
a
print.
wrap-up smear.
Yeah, and then the other one they talked about was circular reporting, where they leak something to the press, and then these investigative agencies and everything pull something up and go, yeah, see, it's all over the news. We need to investigate this, but they're the ones that leaked it. But they're using their own leak to rationalize further investigations. It's insanity.
When we
They
get into
generated their own probable cause.
when we
right?
get into the First Amendment, I mean, this is all, Mark Levin came out with a new book called The Unfreedom of the Press. If you guys haven't read it, it's pretty incredible read. The press is not what they were back in the day.
An ethical, licensed journalistic field would be amazing.
Gone. Yeah, everybody's an opinion piece now. There's no reporting anymore. I'd kill to have Cronkite back. So moving on. Anybody got anything else?
You're showing your age there.
What's that?
Showing your age with Walter Cronkite.
It was a little before my time, but I know who he was. So we got our section 6, clause 2. Where we at? We got time. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emolument whereof shall have been increased during such time. And no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. So, in a nutshell, if you're a senator or you're a representative, you cannot have another government job. If you have a government job when you're elected, you have to give that government job up. You certainly cannot go take a job from an office that you helped to create. I don't think we have anybody doing that yet. Let's give it a couple years. But yeah. Questions, discussion on that? It's funny, you know, the rugged Constitution says, you know, that you give, you get. So it says you get protection from members of Congress who might try to make highly paid government jobs for themselves.
They wouldn't do that. Why would they need to do that when they just increase their own pay?
And then you also get protection from too much power by Congress over the other branches of government. Maybe section 6, clause 2 needs to be revisited.
So just real question here. So who created the office of the president-elect?
I'm imagining Biden just came up with this. Does he get paid?
So can
Does
he
he get paid to be president-elect? I don't know how this works. Does he have aides? Do they get paid? You know what? You know
I was
what?
told that actually, I think Obama actually, and I'm not slighting him or anything, but I mean, I think Obama actually did that
Yeah,
when he was elected as well too.
It was.
I don't remember Obama standing in front of signs that said "Office of the President-elect," though. That is the most ridiculous.
Well, now they have those up there just so Biden can remember what he's actually doing.
Well, I'll tell you what else. Well, never mind. I'm not going to get into it.
No
You're right.
politics.
No politics. Stop it. It is about the Constitution.
I kind of saw that coming. I shouldn't have done that.
Brad, what are you drinking? Yeah, no more drink. Whatever that is, you're not allowed to drink it anymore.
At least during this hour.
At least.
Rusty water.
All right, so we're at 9 o'clock. You know what? And we got through 6, so we can pick it up at 7. 7 will be somewhat short. 8 is going to take us a long time to get through. Read up on section 7 and 8, especially 8. At least read through it because there's a whole lot to it. Section 8 is where it starts granting power to the government, right? So far, we've had the rules on how it's laid out for Congress, what they're allowed to do, what they're immune from, things like that. But section 8 is going to be the power to tax, all the powers, the powers for to maintain militaries. So that's going to take us a ways to get through. I don't even know how many clauses there are in that. It's ridiculous. So does anybody have questions about tonight?
So one of the things that we do have that resource post that we had put up, some people are asking to post books or articles mentioned in the Zoom. So we'll go ahead and put links up there to the books. The Rugged Constitution is one that we've referenced. And then Jim, you've got the Heritage, or what was it?
Heritage Constitution.
My Heritage Guide to the U.S. Constitution.
Heritage Guide to the.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
put those links up.
Heritage Softail. Huh?
Yeah, I wish.
We have one. No.
Uh-huh.
If anybody has any other resources that you guys are using, feel free to send them along so we can include them because anything helps. You know, we're all like, we're not all 10s here, so you know, we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, the 10s don't show up. We'd be getting through this a lot quicker if the 10s would show up.
They might be sitting watching
All right.
and laughing at us.
Yeah, probably. All right. So, hey, man, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate every single one of you guys that show up here. I appreciate all the views on YouTube. I'll keep going as long as you guys keep showing up. We'll get through it. If we get through it and you still keep showing up, then we're just gonna move on into other things, man. I'll do this forever. So thanks. All right.
you.
We'll see you guys. I'll go
Thank-
live here in a minute on the Constitution page.
See you next
Thanks, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.